I thought I'd make this short video showing how exactly I arrange my OneNote in order to work on sermon preparation and do the exegesis and all the various elements that go into a sermon. The first thing I do is I arrange my OneNote so that, as you can see up here, I have the New Testament Sermons notebook and then 02 Mark, and I suggest you number your books because this way they'll stay in order. 01 would be Matthew, 02 Mark, and so forth, all the way across the New Testament, and also as you do the Old Testament. And then at the top here, the tabs, I have the various chapters. So currently in chapter 9, as far as I've worked out into the setup, you can see that the first pericope is highlighted, it's set apart with the stars, and then 39 would be the 39th sermon in the book of Mark. The pericope is Mark 9, 1 to 10. And then I have here my first set, which follows this sermon planner that I wrote with the help of some other people. It follows this basic pattern. So the first thing I'm going to do is work on the Greek and the Hebrew, Greek and or Hebrew, and then the English, do some structural analysis, and then I'm going to move to the verse-by-verse analysis. But so here you have the Greek and Hebrew, and it's set up in such a way using the Byzantine text. And down here it's Mark 9, 1 to 9. Here's the entire Hebrew passage. And then below that, I have the English passage as well. And then below that, eventually, I'll have the structural analysis for Greek and maybe English, depending on how zealous and how much time I actually have available. Now, one of the things that I do to make my life easier later on is I superscript every Greek word. So here I would superscript this as a 1, and then the next word 2, and so forth through the verse. So when I get to a new verse, I would start over with superscript 1, and then superscript 2, and so forth. Now you'll see why in a minute why I do that. But every word would have a superscript number assigned to it. Over here on the right-hand side, I have the passage I'm working on. So the pericope is set apart this way it doesn't get confused with the next section. I have the stars. I have the translations, and I've chosen to compare the ESV, the New King James, to the New American Standard in this particular text. You can use whatever you like, but those are the ones that I use. And I just pasted them in. I paste them in, and I arrange the columns in such a way that they line up pretty nicely next to each other. Some people prefer to use Bible arcing. I'm starting to mess with that a little bit, so there's nothing here to actually show you at this point, but someday maybe I'll actually begin to work on that. Now the interesting thing is then I work verse by verse through the text, and what I do is well, let me go back to one that I've actually done. So here's the text from the pericope is Mark 8, 22 to 30, and you see I've superscripted every word in the text. And if you go down to Mark 8, 22, I have this form, this column, for nouns, verbs, and they're numbered, and they relate to the numbers up here. So 1 is here. So the case, in this case, it would simply be a conjunction, and I would type that in and translate it. And I would do that for each word in the verse. Down below, I'd then write out my own translation. And then here, I begin to look for lexical and grammatical issues within the text itself. Is there different uses of the genitive, the dative, the nominative? Is the article being used as a pronoun? You know, those kinds of questions that Greek guys would want to deal with. And then cross-references, critically important. Scripture interprets Scripture. And so I'll have a number of cross-references listed here with comments related to each one. So I would just hit enter and then start with one, the cross-reference, and then make some comments accordingly. After that's completed, I begin my own personal commentary on the verse, and then I will look at Calvin, Henry, Matthew Poole, and then other maybe technical commentaries specific to the book of Mark. And I would do that for each verse in the passage. And so As you can see, they all look the same. When I get down to the end here, I have a summary section, and I would write out my summary of the entire passage, comments, various things to note. And then I would have a rough outline and proposition beginning to take place. And then here I have a final outline, things I want to deal with, who's my audience, any applications, relevant illustrations that come out of the text that I can use to further highlight the text, sermon purpose, what am I trying to accomplish, and my final outline and proposition, and then my conclusion. And then I write out my conclusion pretty much word for word, and then my introduction pretty much word for word. So that's pretty much it. It's very simple. Just to quickly review, the notebook is NT Sermons. You can call it whatever you like. The tabs are the chapters of the book, and then on the right-hand side you have the pericope, Mark 8, Mark 8, 1-13, the translations for that passage, Bible arcing, which I'm not doing yet, and then you have the verse itself that I'll be working with. So verse 1, and then it's all numbered accordingly. Now, this superscripting takes a little bit of time. I try to work ahead, so I'm not worried about it. And I'm really only in chapter 6 as I'm preaching right now. So, but I'm worked out all the way up into chapter 9 in my preparation. So it's a little simple tool. Using OneNote, it syncs. I have mine syncing with OneDrive with the cloud, so that I have my sermon notes at all times. And my final outline would be here, pasted in from probably a Word document. But that's it. Any questions? Feel free to contact me. I hope this is helpful, especially for those of you who are OneNote fanatics. Thank you.